Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. Today we talk to Toya Bell, first African-American president of the Austin Young Lawyers Association. She's a graduate of Rice University and received her law degree at the College of William and Mary. Toya has been part of almost every organization you can think of, including serving as past board chair of Leadership Austin, executive committee of the Long Center, the Junior League, Austin Bar Foundation, and Mission Capital. Toya has been recognized with numerous awards throughout her career, including the Junior League of Austin's 2021 Volunteer Extraordinaire Award, Austin Bar Association's Joseph C. Parker Jr. Diversity Award, Mission Capital Community Leader of the Year Award, and the Austin 40 Under 40 Mentor of the Year Award. I'm so happy to have with us today, Toya Bell. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you, Amanda. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast.
Of course, I'm so happy for you to be here today. And I want to start with the beginning because when we met, I know that you are an international lady. You've been all over. You were born in Japan, grew up in San Antonio, went to law school at William and Mary. How did all of your background and all this different diversity of geography lead to you wanting to be a lawyer?
Well, I actually grew up wanting to be a lawyer because I enjoy helping people. And so reaching out to the community and being engaged in various ways, it all sort of came together. You know, being a lawyer, starting my career as a public servant, always being engaged in community service activities, whether it's volunteering, organizing, leading, or just supporting community efforts. All of that really came together in just, the perfect way.
You know, not everybody thinks lawyers help people, but we do. So be like Toya and be a lawyer to help people.
Lawyers do help people. And when I was president of AYLA, we started a marketing campaign. And the theme I came up with was lawyers as leaders. And how are lawyers leaders in the community, not just locally, but around the world? And you think about all the different things that we do. We bring democracy to countries. We provide pro bono legal services. We're representing people in court. We're guardians. All the wonderful things that lawyers do to contribute to the greater good.
Yeah, and that theme is still relevant today because not everybody always thinks of lawyers as leaders. Not everyone thinks that we are, as a group, helping to unite folks in this way. But I'm glad that you started that and that continues for most people today. So tell me, how did you get to Austin?
So I had a judicial clerkship immediately after law school, and I clerked for the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals in San Antonio. And after my clerkship, I was interviewing sort of as I was concluding the clerkship. I came to Austin for an interview with another organization. And one of my friends said, you should check in with one of my friends at the AG's office and just say hello while you're in town. We were classmates. And I went to see her. And while I was there, she called her colleague who was the chair of the Attorney General's Opinion Committee. And she also contacted the first assistant AG. And they showed up in her office and said, we looked at your resume. We'd like to offer you a job on the opinion committee. And so that's what brought me to Austin as an assistant attorney general on the Attorney General's Opinion Committee.
And then you stayed in public service for quite a long time, doing a ton with the Health and Human Services Commission. What drew you to that?
Well, and actually, I was in public service and then I left and went into private practice, big law firm. I had my own practice. I was a corporate lawyer in Bentonville for Walmart for 4 years, did all the employment law for the Sam's Club organization. And then I came back to Texas to round out my public service career with the Health and Human Services Commission and served there as the deputy ethics officer before eventually retiring. And shortly after retirement, I started consulting, doing diversity, equity, inclusion, which was another passion of mine. It's something I've been working on, and now serve as the global DEI director for a company called Bizarre Voice, which is a tech company based here in Austin.
Do you think it's important as a lawyer to have that experience that is public and private sector?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it shows you the different ways that you can use your skills and talents. And each one of the opportunities for me, each opportunity was an opportunity to stretch and grow. And so I really wanted to learn, not just practice my craft as a lawyer, but also learn about all the other things that I could be doing in my professional capacity. As an example, working at Walmart, being embedded in the Sam's Club organization as their employment attorney, it was like getting an MBA on the job. And so it was fantastic. And I learned so much about how businesses organize and what's the role of legal counsel in a corporate setting.
And so you're very busy as a real lawyer. And then you decide you also want to take time to serve the legal community through Austin Young Lawyers Association. Tell me
Yes.
why AYLA was important to you.
When I came to Austin, I had just done a little bit of volunteer work with the San Antonio Young Lawyers when I was there doing my clerkship. And I came to Austin and immediately joined the Austin Young Lawyers Association and began chairing the DEI committee. And it may have been the first year that we had a DEI committee, and got very involved with that, and then was invited to run for a position on the board, and had some great mentors, some of the previous board presidents, and of course, Delane, who was always there with encouragement. And that got me involved with the American Bar Association, and where I was eventually elected as the speaker of the Young Lawyers Division of the American Bar Association. Something neat about that was a highlight was that I was able to represent the ABA by traveling. So I went to the opening of the French legal year in Paris as a representative of the American Bar Association. And then I also attended the closing of the European legal year at The Hague. And both of those were just amazing, sort of life-changing experiences and enriching, because I met lawyers from around the world to learn about how the profession was for them, what it meant for them to be an attorney. And now one of my closest friends was my host in Paris, a Parisian attorney that we're now
So you're saying that if you get involved with the bar, you could ultimately get a trip to Paris.
Possibly.
If you work hard enough, maybe you'll end up in Paris.
Possibly.
Good to know. So the theme of our podcast is the Council of Firsts. I have been, as you know, stalking you to get you on this podcast because you were our first ever African-American AYLA president. How was that milestone celebrated?
You know, when it occurred, there wasn't really any special event or acknowledgement. And for me, because many times I've been in the environment where I was the first or the only, but it was something that I aspired to do and I was encouraged to do. You know, I was really just focused on doing my committee work and leading in that way, and then serving in other officer positions. And by that time, I was also engaged with the Texas Young Lawyers. I was the district representative for the Texas Young Lawyers, and also engaged with the American Bar Young Lawyers. So I was really just doing the work. And it was nice when people came forward and said, we think you should run for this office. I think you would be terrific. And so it was sort of like just the logical next step, I would say.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that we started this podcast is if people don't remember that you had that milestone, I want them to remember. Because one thing we talked about when we met previously is at some point there started to be pictures on the walls of who are the presidents of the big bar in AYLA. But that happened after your time. So according to the wall, you weren't there. If it makes you feel better, there is no wall anymore. All of us were sent home with our big pictures. And so we have these weird, creepy portraits of ourselves in our houses or our offices. But I want to make sure that if people didn't know that about you, you were the first, and that is important. And if it wasn't a big deal then, I want it to be a big deal for you today.
Thank you, Amanda. That means a lot.
Of course. And if I ever have a big office with a wall, I'm going to get you a picture, and I'm going to ask all the presidents to bring their pictures back, and I will have the wall of presidents for you.
Thank you.
And you'll be there prominently. Besides serving the legal community, you have also been so well-rounded that you serve in the community at large. What have been some of the organizations that have meant the most to you personally or professionally?
Oh, there's so many different things that I've done. I mean, here in Austin, you know, being a member of the board for the Long Center, the Performing Arts, I was the youngest board member. There was me and one other individual. We were the youngest. And we were on that board from, I think, 2001 to about 2016 or so.
Wow.
Yeah. And serving in different capacities. But what was really amazing about it was, you know, when we started, there was no Long Center. It was the Palmer, the auditorium. And so we raised money and did grassroots, you know, everyone on the board was doing grassroots activities as well as major fundraising events to just bring awareness and raise funds to build this performing arts venue for Austin. And so being able to see that all come into fruition, you know, and I remember the first time going there and seeing other children at performances, seeing families taking advantage of the patio overlooking the city. It was just a really rewarding feeling to see all of that happening as a result of the work that we've been putting in over so many years. You know, other organizations, I think an organization that's definitely near and dear to my heart is my sorority.
Mhm.
I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and my mother is also a member. And so she and I became a member in the same chapter that she was in San Antonio. And so that's been a wonderful experience to sort of grow up in that and to continue to volunteer and serve local and global communities through that organization.
Mhm.
The Junior League of Austin has been incredible. And as you mentioned, I was so honored to receive that Volunteer Extraordinaire award from them for my service to the community and to the league.
Mhm.
It's been great to see what league volunteers have done throughout Austin and just the impact that we're able to make individually and collectively, especially with the fundraiser, a Christmas affair, raising over $1 million
Mhm.
every year to give back to the Austin community. As we're talking about first, it reminds me that in San Antonio, along with 5 other friends, we were the first African American members of the Junior League in San Antonio. And so we were invited to become members at the same time and integrated that organization in the early 90s. And then some of us moved away. And so when I came to Austin and transferred to Austin, I think there were maybe 1 or 2
Mhm.
African American members at that time. But one of the things that we all pledged to each other was that, when possible, we would always recruit and bring in others. And so that's something that's continued. And with the Junior League here, I was able to lead the first diversity, equity, inclusion committee that the league had here and serve as a sustaining advisor to that group. And so that was terrific just to make that part of the league's culture
Mhm.
in an open way, to have that committee and have it continue to invite women to not only to be members, but how do we create a more welcoming community within the junior league? And how are we ensuring that we're providing services throughout all of the greater Austin area
Mhm.
to benefit as many diverse constituencies as possible? So,
Well, and in your career, DEI has been a theme with the different committees where you served as the chair of the DEI committee, now your role with the Czar Voice. So, since you have seen DEI as a theme throughout your career, do you think the legal community is getting better at incorporating DEI principles and maybe being more diverse and inclusive?
I think that the legal community is becoming more aware. Before there was the report card and what could be done to satisfy the requirements of the report card. But I think the whole notion of it's more than just, are you diverse? It's, are you inclusive?
Hmm.
Are you welcoming? Because the end goal is for people to feel like they belong. And there are lots of different, studies that have been done by, the Gartners, Deloitte's of the world
Hmm.
that show that team members, employees who do feel a sense of belonging are much more productive. They're much more engaged, they're much more productive, and ultimately your business is much more profitable if you can create that environment where people not only do they want to be there, but they feel that they belong and that they're valued and respected.
What do you think about this idea of formally adding the B for the belonging so that it's not just DEI, but it's DEIB?
I think that's a great idea. I think it's you still need to make sure that you're actively, the act of being inclusive is it's something that you have to work on daily. And it comes about in many ways. How you interact with people, how you run a meeting, what's your work environment like, what's your social environment like with relation to work. um how do you respect and value the different ways that people show up and the different ways that they contribute?
Hmm. Will you talk to the audience about some of the projects that you have been a part of or a leader of in the different organizations that you've served in?
Absolutely. Um, when I was chair of Leadership Austin, the mayor's task force had just completed their work on race and social justice here in Austin. And one of the things that they did, they invited 160 community leaders to attend the Beyond Diversity seminar, which was a 2-day program. And I was one of the people invited. And at that program, I really just had this realization, this is something that we should try to bring to Leadership Austin, to all Leadership Austin alumni. Maybe we can do this, get this started during my year. When I mentioned it to the mayor at the time, was Mayor Adler, he said, I think this is something everyone in Austin should be taking. So then I started working with, putting together a group of stakeholders, working with our CEO and our board, and, getting the approval to actually be the group that would bring this Beyond Diversity program to the greater Austin community. And so up to this point, I think, I don't know the exact number, but it's maybe around 5 or 7, somewhere between 5 and 7,000 people have gone through the Beyond Diversity training program, the first level, and now we also have the second level. And so it was just great to see the way that it was adopted in the Austin community. People who were not just Leadership Austin alumni program participants, but the greater Austin community overall. Some corporations sent their entire leadership team through the program. And so it was just great to see that there was a need for it and we were able to address that need and then talk to people who went through the program and to hear their personal experiences of how it was transformative for them. And there were things that they could take back to their personal and professional lives and start acting on right away. So that was very, very rewarding.
Well, and I know you also, while you were AYLA president, you had a great idea for a future courthouse that had not yet been built. Do you want to talk about your project for the children's waiting room?
Sure. It was an amazing project to work on. It started because in the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, they had a courthouse waiting room project that we set up during a meeting when we were in Washington, D.C. And we went and painted the courtroom. We had toys, we decorated, and we did that sort of in a whole one day, with a waiting room area. There was a little pamphlet put together. I kept thinking about, is there a need for that in Austin? And so I started doing research on whether we had a waiting room here, and we didn't. Then I, again, organized a group of stakeholders, representatives from AYLA, Travis County Women Lawyers Association, some of the judges, some of the courthouse staff, and put together a consortium really so that it was an AYLA committee, but it had broader membership. And we did a survey at the courthouse. And at that time, there were over 19 children at any given time just alone in the courthouse. And it ranged from, toddlers or infants that might be with an older child to kids that were teenagers. And they were there because they weren't witnesses and they weren't the subject of litigation, but they were there because their parents had business at the courthouse. And so thinking about, and understanding the trauma of children seeing their parents and arguing, if it's a divorce hearing or in handcuffs or shackles, walking through the hallway, kids were exposed to all these different things that they really shouldn't be exposed to. And we did talk to some of the judges and I said other court administrators. And so once we had that, the data and the analytical data and the anecdotal data, then we were able to start putting together a strategy on a waiting room. Across the nation, many courthouses have a fully licensed daycare facility within the courthouse for children whose parents have business at the courthouse. And so that was the ultimate goal, but we just wanted to start small and at least have a waiting room. That was in, I would say, the late 90s when we started that, probably 98 or so. Now there is a space dedicated in the new courthouse, which is outfitted for children. It's several rooms, much larger than we could ever imagine. And I think now the next step is just for that to become operational.
Uh-huh.
But it's exciting to at least have the space available because as many of you know, space is always prime. The real estate, to get the real estate is a big hurdle. So we have the real estate now, and hopefully the court administration will move forward and establish the daycare or waiting room area.
I don't know if you remember this. I remember you and I were on the same tour to visit the courthouse before it opened, when we still had to
Yes.
wear the hard hats and things to see as everything was getting fleshed out. And I don't know that we saw that room, but I do remember starting to chat about, the need and where did the kids go and all of that. So,
and I was able to get a sneak peek of the room.
Oh, great.
Yes. So Delane and I went in and I took a picture for the doorway, just like, I'm here. We're actually in the doorway of the waiting room. But I think it'll be a fantastic facility once we can get it set up.
Mm-hmm.
And we've raised a little over $10,000 It may be more at this point that's been set aside for that purpose for quite some time. So once it's up and operationalized, AYLA will be able to still make a significant impact on the space.
Well, and it's interesting because some AYLA presidents and Austin Bar presidents have an initiative for a year and then they leave and that initiative is gone because that was the president's great idea and it left with the president. You had one that has spanned decades
Yes.
and finally got to fruition. So that's a testament to what a good idea it was, what the need was. And honestly, you still being in town and asking about it and still being involved enough to keep wondering, like, where is this great idea that we did all of this data for in the 90s? So kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was a joy to do it. Yes.
What advice do you have for lawyers who want to follow in your footsteps?
I think, it goes back to some advice that I give whenever I'm mentoring someone or even when I'm at a career day. Um, Being a lawyer, having the type of training that we have, it's a profession that you can do so many things with. And so not to allow others to limit you and not to limit yourself. If you just think about all the many things that lawyers do, even the lawyers that you know personally, right? Who are, elected and appointed officials, professors, journalists, authors, um, mentors, business people. Many CEOs also have law degrees. There are a lot of people in corporate America sprinkled throughout that have law degrees. So there are a lot of different things that you can do as a lawyer. And I think that that's something that's really unique about our profession because you're not locked into one career path. And there's so many ways to be successful as a lawyer.
It's been nice talking to different lawyers on this podcast about what it is that they do with their law degree. And people usually have the same feedback of, we understand that you have to get your bills paid, but have a job that makes you happy. Because nothing is more frustrating than talking to someone who's only complaining and like with the law degree, you could do anything. So get out of that situation and do something with your degree that makes you happy and that hopefully serves people.
Yeah, it serves people. It brings you joy. Now that I am serving in the capacity as the DEI director, I love going to work every day. I look forward to when it's time to log in. It's great. Our company has 8 employee resource groups. They're all very, very engaged. And so even just meeting with them, I have monthly one-on-ones with them. We talk about what their plans are, of course, what their budget requests might be, but just, listening to what they would like to do in terms of sharing their culture, sharing their identity with the greater BV community and inviting others in, right? So all of our groups are open to everyone in the company. And it's been wonderful just to see that level of interaction with people who, whether they're identify as members of a community or if they're allies of the community or they're just interested, they want to learn more about their friends and their colleagues' experiences. That brings me joy to see all of that happening and to see the camaraderie, the collegiality, and the sense of inclusion and belonging that you just feel it when you're in the space and when you talk to people. And all of that translates into the company culture. So it's been terrific to be a part of that.
What's next for you?
What's next? I don't know. I love what I'm doing, so I haven't thought about. I will say one thing that my husband and I were talking about. What's next? Buying a chateau in France.
Oh, I support that. I support that for you, and then I support myself inviting myself to your chateau.
I would say buying a chateau in France.
We got to put it out in the universe to manifest it.
Yes, exactly.
So why not? So what's next is you will have a chateau
in France.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our audience before we leave?
I would say think about what you can do each and every day as a lawyer to be of service to someone else. Because we do have a unique set of skills, whether it's the ability, to think on our feet, whether it's the ability to advocate, put together a cogent strategy and an argument on behalf of something or against something. the ability to navigate complicated processes, which a lot of people can't do. Um, the ability to identify issues. What's the real issue? What's the real sticking point? But using those skills that we all have been trained in and that we've honed over our careers to really advance people and issues that need help. Individuals that need support who can't access the legal system, individuals in the workplace that aren't being recognized and maybe have an unidentified need, being able to speak up for them and create an opportunity forward, a path forward for those individuals and those causes, because that's something that we're uniquely skilled in doing, regardless of the environment that we're working in.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I hope that the audience reaches out to you and congratulates you for being our first ever African American AYLA president. You really should do it. She's super cool. And if you weren't around when she was president, you still have time to say thank you to her for opening those doors. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all next time.